When I was a young boy fresh into high school and fresh into my online Xbox gaming career, I was introduced to one of my favorite multiplayer PvP games. No, it's not Battlefield, no, it's not Call of Duty, no, it's not Halo, further back than League, further back than Overwatch, stop right there. Star Wars Battlefront. And I know it's the controversial 2015, the one that nobody asked for, the remake that didn't actually remake anything, and an unofficial sequel to a series that was so beloved that when this game came out, people were just upset it wasn't the originals. But I even pre-ordered this game, and I plan to talk about it at some time in the future, so I'm gonna save the sentimentals for then. Ever since I got a taste of fast-paced PvP games that last anywhere between 10 to 30 minutes, I was immediately hooked. Very little downtime between games, a little amount of objectives that you can kind of focus on in the game and track that between different games for achievements or in-game unlockables. For instance, hut contracts, real ones no. But this fueled and filled my instant satisfaction. Even though I sucked and still relatively do at fast-paced PvP games that require quick thinking. And in my early days, I had an internet connection as slim as the string holding my temper above an angry boiling pot of water. But because of this instant satisfaction being the first real time I interacted with a dopamine cycle like this, it's completely diminished my attention span long before short-form content, which makes a game with story and actual text happening on screen that's not accompanied by a fully musically scored, beautifully crafted, animated backdrop, or I guess cutscene, that lasts between 10 and like 30 seconds, really difficult. However, we have a great middle ground where I can take games at a pace that kind of suits me, you know, maybe don't have to take it too fast, don't have to take it too slow. I can play as many games as I want to before I inevitably, rage quit, or satisfyingly end that session without having to say, we can't win on a loss, come on, one more, and, feeling bad about it, because I can always pause it, I can always come back later, I can always end this run early, I can always stick it out if I want to, or I can be obsessed with completing these missions and quests outside of the run, game, whatever, that give me rewards and items and unlockables and a real pat on the back and say, good job for doing this thing. That gives you a reward that kind of probably matters. And most importantly, where a kid can be a kid. Windblown's animated intro plays every time you open the game and introduces you to our cast of characters, a common enemy, and sets a lighthearted tone for the journey that awaits us. And then it crushes it with an experiment that's gone wrong and information that gets out regarding a vortex that it's going to rip and tear the world apart. It sets a little bit of a background story and a goal that's put up in the corner of your brain that says, we need to defeat the bad guys, whoever that may be. Not to mention a breathtaking introduction for the OST and art style. I love the music in this game. The game then starts with a disembodied voice telling us to wake up from our slumber. We're in a distant but not so unfamiliar land, then start a run and learn about the mechanics right away. This places a focus on the actual gameplay elements, and it's not until we beat or die on our first run that we're introduced to our NPCs that are going to guide us through and provide us more actual story throughout this game. The story is then fed to us as we choose to eat it, which is a formula a lot of roguelite and roguelike games follow. This precedent was learned and set by Hades. This, my G-Spree gang, is the perfect waypoint between no story where you just get into an online PvP game and then get out to do it all over again, and the complete opposite side of the spectrum being a visual novel. Now there's a roguelike and roguelite game out there for each level of how much story do you want, how little story do you want, how much interactability do you want, how little interactability do you want. And that's really what makes this genre amazing and one of my favorite things ever, because of the pure variety and the fact that you can just tack on roguelike or roguelite onto any other tag on Steam. And this is obviously something we've seen outside of roguelikes. There's games that give you the story through missions, like Borderlands, whereas at the same time they give you story outside of those missions, or while you're in between stuff just kind of doing menial tasks. Then there's games like Slime Rancher where you kind of do the game at your own pace and then happen upon the story, and then sometimes you get focused in on that story, you're following the story, but then you branch off and you start doing your own thing, and then you'll eventually circle back and come to the story again. One's fast-paced rootin' tootin' highfalutin FPS shooting with gun combat, and the other is more of a self-paced exploration with key goals but an overarching feeling that you can just do whatever you want. And on the other side of that same coin is Borderlands being that same thing I explained for Slime Rancher, and then Slime Rancher being relatively the same thing for Borderlands, because if you really want to start getting into the micromanagement of Slime Rancher, you are One-track mind, just going straight for this one objective. You're looking for this one slime. You're looking for this one key to open this one door so you can get to this one place. So maybe you can place a drill down. You can get resources. You can go back to your base, build a drone that does stuff for you so you can get out there and get exploring so you can get new equipment, new slimes, new poop. You get the idea. That's all I needed for Nine Kings. In fact, I didn't even need that much. There doesn't have to be a story in this game. There isn't a story in this game. We can just kind of ascertain that, yeah, we're a king. We're fighting other kings. Nine Kings doesn't have a story. You get into the run, you play the run, you get out of it, you get some perks for that king that you played. You unlock more kings. Once you unlock all of the kings, or maybe you just like this one king so much that you're just gonna keep beating the game just over and over. You're just gonna play this one king until you get to the highest difficulty and then maybe think of branching out. But the animation on that intro is dope. Now we still aren't to a main point of this video, which is more of a broader study conducted by me, which is kind of meant to explore and think about the idea of live service roguelikes. But I think most importantly for this broad idea and for this kind of study, the game has to be free to play. We have to understand that there will be microtransactions. Now there's going to be a specific gacha system in there somewhere, battle passes with the upgraded tier list, the whole shebang, and probably some content that'll be easier unlocked by my wallet. A character unlock system that is true to the core aspects of roguelike games, where you just gradually unlock everything as you go, you know, play specific missions, do specific actions within those missions. Think Fortnite, but it's not a battle royale, it's not PvP. It's got unique characters that all have their own unique set of abilities instead of just a skin. So maybe not like Fortnite, but think of all the things that you don't think of when you immediately think of Fortnite. So think of just the event parts, think of the new skins that come out, think of the new drops that come out, think of the frequency of these updates, think of the fact that most of these are limited time, maybe they come back to the shop. Maybe you can trade or purchase these with in-game currency from other characters or from other people in the game. Think of corporate greed really feeding into the fear of missing out factor of its players. At this point, I feel like I'm kind of describing Warframe as a whole, but I'm just gonna kind of acknowledge it just so that I can acknowledge it and move on. And a lot of times the words that I'm spewing out don't actually mean anything, and I just kind of keep saying the same kind of stuff over and over, but in a slightly different way. It's because my English is bad. And that's kind of why I'm trying to branch out and do a commentary video in this style, where I kind of take an idea and run with it best I can, explore new avenues, and try to kind of present a new idea, and while at the same time having a central game to talk about. In this case, it's Terminal Brigade. However, to prove my qualifications for this video, here's my plaque. If you like it, I signed it with myself. I earned it. Anyway, let's actually talk about Terminal Brigade. A co-op PvE action roguelike third-person shooter that's completely free to play, that's being developed overseas in China, where they're bringing newish enough of a formula and gameplay feel / style to the scene, so let's see if it sticks. Yeah, whatever, dude. I'm just picking whatever has the cooler picture. Can I help you?
I am reloading.
I'm reloading. I'm reloading. I'm reloading.
I'm reloading.
I'm reloading. That's great, buddy. No, I don't care. Blah blah blah. Yeah, I've read these before. Just kidding, I haven't.
Read? In my video game?
In my offline video game with shooting guns in it. There is a good amount of story in this game, and you do unlock it by just natural progression. But if there's more for me to interact with outside of the game than the story, then I'm most likely gonna just ignore the story, but I understand that's just a me thing. That's just how my brain works. I'm not saying it's bad. I'm just personally not into that aspect. I'd rather interact with how I can make the runs better for the future, and then those actual runs themselves. If the story is your thing, you can unlock these characters' backstories slowly through progression, as well as some lore of this world here and there. Now, immediately upon opening this game, we hit some glaring features that make it incredibly obvious that this game is free to play and live service.
I want to gamble now.
So let's spin that wheel. Oh, nothing? Really? Who'd have thought? I mean, this is mostly for cosmetics, which is that gacha style that I alluded to earlier. It's gonna be in the video game, but it's not gonna be like an absolute necessity that you keep doing more pulls. Although it is summer right now, which means beach fan service. So necessity, not necessity? Like, where do we stand on that? So if you'll excuse me, I'm about to spend 5 hours of a living wage on a free-to-play game. Now, this game might be a new release, but I'm very well putting it into the early access, like early access stage, because it is very poorly optimized. I'm just going to note that for now because you're seeing all of the gameplay happening in the background. It looks like it runs on Unreal Engine 5 and DirectX 12, which if you're familiar, that means it's going to run like ass. And I am on medium graphic quality. Granted, this game is primarily developed again in China, so servers are probably not super prominent in the Midwest of the United States. So we might just have to chalk up some of these issues on lag. I expect it, so I'm not really complaining about it. It is what it is and stuff happens. But the gameplay experience isn't completely ruined by these frame drops or lag spikes. I haven't lost a run or I haven't died to a boss because of these. I'm just kind of able to work around it, which is totally fine. And there's also possible translation problems being from China, which is cool because they're promoting change and they're saying, hey, here's a little survey. If you answer a little question or 20, you get some in-game currency, which I really don't know what that in-game currency is for. There's like 20 different in-game currencies, but all I know is I'm rich in whatever this is. And all I had to do was say how the game looks, feels, sounds, reads, and searches for the meaning of my personal life. For legal reasons, it didn't ask for that. I thought it was just funny. Branching off of that, what does a game like this look like in the future? Well, I love to locate a roadmap, but I'm quite literally lost, and I can't really ask the locals for questions because they speak a different language, and the only other language I know is baby's first German, so I can't really ask for directions, but that's fine. The game's brand new. It just came out. They're working on fixing stuff and optimizing the game, and it's live service, so they're also trying to bring new content to the game at the same time as fixing it. So we're not going to be getting anything big really soon. At least that's what I think. Who knows what they're doing. So here are some other questions that I have that I wanted to touch on quickly, followed by the overall in and out of game experience, including progression. Can you play it solo? Yes, but it's a little bit difficult to finish these missions in a timely manner, which is what you need to unlock the next mission or the next difficulty up. How's the community and matchmaking? Now, I don't know if I've just play at weird times for the Central American region, but I had a hard time finding a group on a Wednesday afternoon for a specific level's specific difficulty that most people playing regularly are probably already past. So my suggestion is just to find 2 friends and force them to play with you. So what's the in-game experience like? What are the actual runs like? As you complete each section, you get to interact with a shop and you get a perk or perk level up. There's 2 mini bosses, 1 elite boss, and then the final boss, I do believe. And then in between these, there's missions which are just kind of rooms with enemies in them that you just kill all the enemies and then move on. Take this, you rat bastards.
Whoa!
You clankers are all the same! You're all built the same. You're all the same model. You all look the same, talk the same, do the same shit, drink the same gasoline. I'm gonna spit on you with my human saliva. Missions at a lower level can take maybe 15 to 20 minutes, and then once you get to a higher level, higher difficulty, and especially if you do it by yourself, it can take 30 minutes plus. And this is when you have a trio where you're actually communicating with the other 2 players, so playing with randoms might make it take a little bit longer. Outside of the game, we have a fairly large skill tree where we can upgrade the 3 main stats. Vitality, consisting of healing and shield, damage, need I say more, and the most important thing, wealth. Increase the amount of money that you start with, decrease the amount that you have to spend, increase the amount you save, and interest, and all that good stuff, probably, as well as like rerolls for perks. You do unlock 3 other playable characters pretty easily, and there's one special more character, but I haven't really figured out how to unlock him. I don't know if it's like a paid battle pass or a gacha aspect, but seriously, I haven't seen him at all in actual combat, so he's not like game breaking or anything. And maybe in the future of a game that, you know, kind of tanks, it's going to have a character that can just kind of beat every single mission with no problems whatsoever. I don't think we're headed in that direction yet because this game is so new, but therein lies the issue of having characters on different levels that have different abilities. You know, how do you make one character not completely break the game? And outside of the game, I mentioned we also have like some gacha aspects. There's a couple of other events that you do, you know, daily stuff that you get to log in and interact with that unlock voice lines, cosmetics, money, other currency. And I'm still finding more currencies that I know what to do with, but you know, someday maybe I'll actually look into figuring out what it all does. But that's kind of what I think about live service free to play roguelikes and roguelites. I think it's a really cool market that it's kind of gonna be difficult to get into it. Pew Pew Games, the developer of Terminal Brigade, this is their first game. Not sure what publishing company they are under, if they're even under a publishing company. Maybe they're self-published, but this sort of thing is going to take a lot of time, money, effort, and a dedicated player base to actually continue playing this. Oh, last year I believe we saw a game called The First Descendant, which was kind of like a Warframe-ish game, so kind of plays into that aspect. But a game like Terminal Brigade, where inside of the run you get upgrades and stuff, and it really leads into trying to be a roguelike or roguelite. Hard emphasis on the T actually for these for Terminal Brigade. You don't really want to give your player base too much to work with outside of the game that it's going to work inside of the game, which is kind of where you fall on a lot of these live servicey-esque events, missions, stuff happening, just being cosmetics. And then at that case, you're kind of just hoping that your players like your game enough and you put out good enough cosmetics to where they would want to purchase them. And I know for me personally, I'm not spending money in free-to-play games anymore. The last time I spent money in a free-to-play game was probably, oh my god, I actually don't know. I can't say. I've moved on past that age of my life. Yeah, I've spent money on free-to-play games. Yeah, I've spent money on League of Legends. Yeah, I've spent money on Valorant. Yeah, I bought Overwatch 1 like 3 times. But I got bills now. I gotta pay for stuff. So I'm not spending money on free-to-play games when I could just turn around, look at my Steam wish list, and pick up a new roguelike for less than 20 bucks. We're in a fun stage of capitalism. I like this video. Let me know what you guys think. I have been standing here for over an hour. My pizza dough is ready and rising outside of its bowl. I need to go make pizza real bad, but I appreciate you spending time with me as usual. Have a wonderful rest of your day, week, weekend, all that good stuff, and I'll catch you next time that you catch me.
Piss.